Hey everybody, in this video I am going to show you an accordion style book and how to make one. I actually don't have a finished version of this, so I'm going to deconstruct this sample that I'm in the process of making. This is not a terribly hard style of book to make. It's pretty cool. It's not actually stitched, although there are a couple ways you could introduce stitching into it. To do this though, what you'll need is some sort of cutting surface, a ruler, a blade, and either some acid-free glue, preferably a glue stick because it'll help things not wrinkle as much, or some type of archival binding tape. Do not, under any circumstances, use clear cellophane tape for this. Unless you are going for a grunge look, which in that case, I guess it would be all right. Don't use cellophane tape. It pretty much always looks like garbage and it falls apart after a couple years. So I really caution you against using that, but otherwise, go nuts. So what is an accordion style book? This one isn't put together, but I think you can kind of get the idea. An accordion style book is made out of a couple lengths of long paper, and there's a cover on either end, and the covers are zigzag from each other. So it opens this way and it'll open this way. This particular book I made from a sketch that I never really felt worked out quite right, and it was on a very large piece of Stonehenge paper. I actually think that it might have a better life in this, and I think I'll come back in and I'll draw some other things on these other pages at some point. But it's fairly heavyweight paper. It's long, which is probably the most important aspect, and the paper was large enough that I was able to cut 2 long stretches of paper. So that's great. In order for this to become a good accordion, though, I need to be able to attach these 2 lengths of paper together. So there are a few different ways I can do this. I think probably the best way for this book is I'm going to take one of these pages that is a full size length. Do I want to do that? Yeah, I want to do that. So one that spans the whole width. Notice that this one doesn't. That's gonna create problems for me here in a minute, but that's okay. I've got one that spans the whole width, and what I'll do is I'm just gonna line this short one up with the crease, and I'll glue these 2 pages together, set a weight on them overnight, or like a heavy textbook or something, plunk that on there, and they'll be attached to each other, and I'll end up with a much longer book. If you look up other demos on YouTube or wherever, you'll often see people taking, let's see, where's a good example of this? Imagine this is a full length. You'll see people using binding tape and attaching them end to end, laying tape over the seam, and then the binding tape is actually strong enough to be a hinge. You can totally do that. Binding tape is less common, so I can't assume that you have it. And this, in all honesty, works fine too. In a perfect world, you would be attaching a full-size sheet of paper, right? Over time, this unevenness will lead to a crease in your paper because the depth is unequal, right? This is shallower and this is thicker, but that's okay. We're doing DIY right now, so we're gonna use what we've got. Why did I end up with this odd size? It's because I wanted this composition like this. I wanted to be able to see this part of the pearls on this page and the clasp to come over on this page. So that someday, when I've got my book standing up to display, this bend, or the zig or the zag, depending on how you look at it, breaks up part of this composition. So that's how I ended up with a strange orientation for this. So I'll attach those at some point. I'm going to assume that you know how to use a glue stick, so I'm not going to show you that right now. I also have the cover to consider. I have this paper, and actually the size of this book was because I had this size of paper. I had 2 sheets of it that I could make and cut down into the same size. Ideally, what I'll do is I'm going to find a piece of mat board, and I'm going to glue this odd size here, attach it to the inside of my fancy paper, cut down a mat board piece to this rectangle, glue that inside, cover this over, and then this entire piece will be a relatively heavyweight, solid cover that attaches my accordion together. And I'll do the exact same thing on the other side. Now, regardless of how many pages or how many zigs and zags you want inside your accordion, one of the hallmarks of an accordion book is that the covers open in a Z. The reason for that is because you want an even number of zigs to zags, right? You want an even number of creases on both sides so that your book doesn't look wonky, for lack of a better word. You don't want it to have a much larger spine on one side than the other. So basically what I'll end up doing is just gluing a bunch of stuff together for this. Then the cool thing about this book is that it can stand up on its own. I know this is kind of hard to see via camera, but I hope you get the relative idea. This is a little bit more in the realm of art books. The cool thing about this is that you could, if you were in a show in a gallery, you could stand this up on a pedestal and viewers would be able to see every single page that you put into this. So it's maybe not, I don't know, like the finest craft of bookbinding, but it is really cool and it does have its uses. And so I present this to you here for your consideration. So hopefully I can finish this out within the next few days, but I think you guys get the idea. It's just a series of folding and then making sure your covers open on either end and are sturdy in some way. So, the Accordion Fold Book.